I went to Saudi Arabia in 2011, December 2011. That's about 7.5 years ago. I went there to work on a new project involving Quran. Now, I had been working 25 years in human rights with U.S. Congress, British and Canadian parliaments. And then after that, I moved to Annapolis, Maryland, which is the capital of Maryland, where I was the head of the Democratic Party and also was involved in politics. Got elected to the Annapolis City Council and then ran for mayor. I lost the mayoral race, and then for 2 years I felt, oh God, what am I going to do now? There's nothing left for me to do. I lost the election because I wanted to be mayor of Annapolis, the capital city, and I figured if I could be mayor of Annapolis, I could be governor of Maryland. God had other plans for me. I went to Saudi Arabia to work on a new contemporary American English translation of Quran. I wasn't translating. I didn't know Arabic. And I didn't know anything about Islam. I studied in 3 different Christian graduate schools to be a pastor. But they wanted me there because they wanted to do something different. They wanted to cross-reference this new Quran with the Old and New Testaments of the Bible. It had never been done before. And the message was, okay, to Christians and Jews, you have the Old Testament, you have the New Testament, but here's God's final testament, the Quran. So I started cross-referencing. I provided over, I think, 1,300 cross-references at the bottom of each page where Ar-Rahman was mentioned in the Quran, or God the Most Merciful, then I would show where it was mentioned in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And I went through this. Where Musa was mentioned in the Quran, then I would show where it was mentioned, where he was mentioned as a prophet in the Old Testament. And it went on and on and on. Well, in order to do this work, I had to read the Quran over 20 times during the first 6 months. And believe me, I was shocked at what I was reading. I was reading about Isa, or Jesus, Maryam, Mary, the mother of Jesus. I was reading about Jesus doing many miracles, raising people back from the dead to life again. I was reading about all the many miracles. There are even 2 miracles in the Quran that aren't mentioned in the Bible. So I was shocked. The other thing I was shocked about was the behavior of the people. Because I'd been told before I went to Saudi Arabia that I should be very, very careful, that there are people there who are going to try to kidnap me or cut my throat. And people were bringing me videos of Al-Qaeda and cutting throats and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So when I arrived in Saudi Arabia, I was afraid to walk on the streets. I told Dr. Safi Kaskas, who was the main translator of the Quran, I said, I need to go to a supermarket. He had made an office for me in his office building. He had made an apartment for me. But I said, I need to get food. So I said, can your driver please take me to a supermarket? Dr. Safi said, he said, my driver's off today. He's not working. But he took me to the window and he pointed down the street to a big building. He says, that's a supermarket. You can walk down there. And I said, but how am I going to get there? He said, he laughed. He says, you gotta walk. But I said, if somebody walks, they'll kidnap me. Well, he said, you're gonna get awfully hungry. Well, I eventually got out the front door and I started walking. But every time a Saudi passed me on the sidewalk, I'd turn around and look over my shoulder and make sure he didn't have a knife in his hand. I was scared, because this is all I knew about Saudi Arabia. And all I knew about Islam was what I saw on American television. See, everything I'd learned about Islam was wrong. Very, very bad. So now I'm living in Saudi Arabia. I get down to the supermarket, and I look different than most Saudis. And they say, "Where are you from?" And I said, nervously, "I'm from America. I'm from the United States." And they would reach out and hug me. And they would say, "Ahlan wa sahlan." I would get in a taxi to go somewhere, and there would be a Pakistani taxi driver. He refused to take my money. He said, "You're new in Saudi Arabia, I can't charge you." This wasn't what I was expecting. People were good to me. And it was the goodness of the people that I was meeting every day that brought me to Islam. I, for 6 months, every night reading Quran, every morning asking questions, my life began to change. After 6 months, I said to Dr. Safi, can you take me to a mosque? I want to see a mosque. And he wouldn't say yes, he wouldn't say no, but I wanted to go to a mosque. So I gave up on him. I heard azan. It was Maghrib prayer time, just like we're coming to Maghrib prayer now. There was a mosque down the street. It was called Masjid Taqwa. So I ran down the street, and I stood there knocking on the door of the mosque. I didn't know you could just open the door and walk in. Other people were opening the door and walking in, but I know I was a Christian pastor. I don't know if I can go inside the mosque. Finally, after about 10 minutes, Shafiq Zubair, he's the muaddin from the mosque, came to the door. He said, "May I help you?" I said, "Yes, I'm a Christian from the United States. Is it okay to come inside the mosque?" And Shafiq, he reached out and hugged me, and he said, "Ahlan wa sahlan, welcome." I went to the mosque every time there was a call to prayer for the next 3 days. And I would sit in the back row of the mosque. I would just sit and watch because I didn't understand what was going on. I saw men standing, bowing, putting their face to the floor. And I saw all of this, and I was listening in Arabic, but I didn't understand Arabic at the time. And finally, after 3 days, I said to Shafiq, I felt God's presence there. I said, "Can you teach me to pray like a Muslim?" And Shafiq taught me Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu. My life changed. After 3 days and after memorizing the Al-Fatiha, I asked Shafiq, "What do I need to do now?" And he said, "You need to go to, you need to say Al-Shahada." So I asked Dr. Sadiq Malki if he could take me to the Islamic Education Foundation. And there I said Al-Shahada, and I recognized the fact that I was a Muslim. Some interesting things happened, though, while I was working on this new translation of the Quran. I came across a verse, Surah 3, I think around Ayah 110. It said, there are amongst the people of the book, the Christians and the Jews, it says there are some who are faithful to God, who are true to the faith. And I asked Dr. Safi, what does that mean? He says it's talking about you. You see, my mother taught me when I was a very small child. She would take me to the First Baptist Church of Jefferson, Georgia, a small town in North Georgia, about 1 hour from Atlanta. And she would get books from the library of the church, children's books. Beautiful color pictures of camels and desert. And the one book she got many times was called The God of Ibrahim, or The God of Abraham. And she would take me home, she would put me in her lap, she would open the book and start reading. She read to me about Abraham and his brother Isaac, our brother Lot. Thank you, brother. I'm tired right now. I've been very sick. Brother Abraham and Lot. God told Abraham he had to leave home because his mother and father were worshiping idols. And they went to the parents and they said, we're leaving. God told us to leave and we're going away. And the parents said, well, where are you going? He said, we don't know. God will show us the place. It's amazing. My mother told me, Sammy, my name is Samuel. She called me Sammy. Sammy, look into my eyes. Look, when you're older, you have to pray to the God of Abraham. There's only one God. She always taught this by Christian mother. She also didn't know anything about Islam. But she taught me to pray to the God of Abraham that there's only one God. I was blessed in this way. Later, I would go to Christian high school, Christian university, 3 Christian graduate schools, always thinking of God in the terms that my mother taught me, that God is one, and that there's only one God, and that I must pray to the true God, one true God, the God of Ibrahim, the God of all the prophets. Now I'm sitting in Saudi Arabia, and I'm thinking about what my mother said, Sammy, you got to pray to the God of Abraham. I'm kneeling in front of the Kaaba in Mecca, and remembering the words that my mother taught me so miraculously. You've got to pray to the God of Abraham. Now I'm sitting in Mecca, or near Mecca, in Jeddah, at Masjid Taqwa. The mosque built an apartment for me inside the mosque next to the imam. So I'm the only American in Saudi Arabia that I know of living in a mosque. I met Dr. Mohammed Al-Haj Hussein, who became a good friend. And he invited me to his home for dinner. Thank you, brother. I got to the home, there's a nice meal on the table, and I found there Dr. Mohammed and 5 of his sons. The 6th one is studying in the UK. And I said, MashaAllah, Dr. Mohammed, so many sons. He didn't have any daughters. I said, I've got a daughter. I have only one child, a daughter. Her name is Jenna. I love her very much, but I don't have any sons. Give me one of yours. And Dr. Mohammed said, take Jesus.
Take Jesus as a sacrifice.
So Asa travels with me. He's my interpreter in prisons in Saudi Arabia. We speak in prisons. Pray for Saudi youth. They have the same problems American youth have. Some of them on drugs and alcohol. And we work with them in Bremen prison. Pray for Saudi Arabia. It's going through some transitions right now. And Muslim youth need help. They're born Muslim. But I sit in the cafes and I talk with them. They say, where do you live? And I say, I live down the street at Masjid Taqwa. I said, come with me and pray there. No, why not? Come and pray. No, I don't believe in God. My heart breaks when I hear this coming out of the mouths of children who were born Muslim in Saudi Arabia, living near Mecca. But we have this problem all over the world today. To the youth who are here today, to the children who are here, I want you to look at me. Look into my eyes the way my mother told me to look in her eyes. You are the future of Islam. You are the future of Islam. You're the future leaders of Islam. And you have a great future in front of you. But you need to be faithful to Allah. Some of you may be involved in politics in the future. You could be the governor of Texas. You have the doors wide open in front of you. Some of you radio, television. Some of you artists. Some of you business people. Some of you environmentalists. Everything's open to you in this country. Study hard. And every day remember the 5 prayers and give yourselves to memorizing Quran. When I came in the mosque tonight, I saw madrasa, I saw children learning Quran. Every word you memorize and put into your head will be with you the rest of your lives. And you'll be able to lead America in the future. And who's to say that in the future we'll have a Muslim president? Inshallah. Quickly. Quickly. God help us. You kids, I want to tell you one other thing. You know, 10 years ago, I was running for mayor of Annapolis, Maryland, with hopes of becoming governor of Maryland. But God had other plans. It says in the Quran, there's a way that seems right to a man, but it may be wrong. There's a way that seems wrong to a man. Go to Saudi Arabia and live, but it may be right. I'm so grateful to God. Told me 10 years ago I'd be sitting in Saudi Arabia calling myself Muslim, working with Muslim Voice for Peace and Reconciliation, living in a mosque with a son named Jesus. I mean, only God can write this story. So I'm very grateful to God. I'm very grateful to Asa for being willing to travel with me. I'm 71 years old. I have a very difficult time beginning now. I feel downhill slide.